So, we've solved Jenny's problem at hand with quite an elegant solution. We can use a comprehensive key and don't have to remember indices anymore. What if down the road Jenny decides to add variety to her shop and start selling, say, fancy coffee cups? And we try to calculate profit for this new category, but forget to add it to the original collection. Or simply mistype the key. Trouble, trouble! In this chapter, we are going to address such situation by learning about optionals. Optional is something that is potentially available, but may not be there yet. To declare an option, we use a question mark after its type. Think of it as a gift box. You get a gift for your birthday, and you can clearly see a nice box with a bow. You wanted an Apple Watch, and the box seems to be of a matching size. You get excited about your new gadget and already thinking about ordering a new sports band. Wait a minute! What if it's a mean joke and the box is empty? Not to crush your dreams? No watch and nothing to attach the band to. But you first need to make sure the watch is in the box. A use case in the program for that would be if we declared a variable but haven't initialized it yet, haven't assigned any value to it. In order to use a variable, it has to be initialized. A value must be assigned. If the code is short and simple, we can make sure to keep everything in order and have everything we need at every moment. However, as the code gets more complex, it needs to protect itself, and we need to make sure we test the waters before we step in. This is called unwrapping, or unpacking the gift. There are 3 ways to unwrap optionals, 1 quick but dangerous one, and 2 safe ones. A dangerous one is when we act like the value is already there and insist that it's given to us. It could be useful if we are absolutely sure that it is present. To unwrap a variable in such way, we simply place an exclamation mark after the name of the variable. In our gift box example, if you witnessed your friends crowding Apple Store at the time you happened to be there, but they didn't see you, that's a reasonably sure sign. If we are not sure, however, it's best to use safe methods using if statement. The first one is comparing our variable to nil and making sure they're not equal. Then we can use this variable within the if statement if the condition is true. The second one is temporarily assign our variable to a new variable within the condition of if statement. And if the condition is true, we can use that temporary variable within the if statement. So which unwrapping option to use? If you are absolutely sure the value is there, use the quick method. If you are not, it's best to use the if statements. In our code, we've already dealt with optionals, our dictionary elements. When we access a dictionary element, it returns an optional, not a guaranteed value. Well, enough theory. How about practice?
So we're going to see what optionals are in practice. Understanding optionals is essential for programming in Swift. Let's clear our playground. Optional variable represents a potential value of some type. To declare an optional variable, we position a question mark after specifying its type. In this case, I declared a variable of string type that is optional. It may or may not have a value and assign value to potential text. Now, if I try to access it by printing it in console, we can observe in console I don't have simply potential text, which is an actual value of my variable. I have an optional word in front of it and my potential text in brackets. So why does it have to be an optional? Why can't it be just a string? Remember, we previously established that a variable needs to be initialized before we can access it, otherwise we'll get an error. If, for example, I have a string variable declared, without initializing it, I try to access it. I immediately get an error stating that I'm trying to access it before it's been initialized. Now, what happens if I try to do the exact same thing, but make my variable optional and try to access it before initializing? I don't have that error. Using optionals puts responsibility of using variables potentially without value on developers. In order to access a value of optional variable, we need to unwrap that variable. And there are three ways to do that. One is quick, but not so safe or dangerous, and two safe ones. Let's start with a quick one. So let's just leave our first optional variable. To unwrap it, I simply use an exclamation mark right after the name of my variable. And to access it, I print it. We can see that we get an error because we're trying to access a variable directly when it has no value. Now, if we do assign some value to it, and then try to access it by using the quick unwrapping method, everything is fine. Now notice that we have only text printed in our console, not optional text. That is because we unwrapped our optional and it has a value. As a reminder to demonstrate the difference, if we remove this unwrapping sign, we get optional text, even though the value is there, but we haven't unwrapped our optional variable. Therefore, the output is optional text, not simply text. Now, there are two safe methods to unwrap an optional. The first safe method is using if statement and comparing our variable to nil. And if it is not nil, then we can unwrap it directly and use it safely. As we can observe in our console, nothing got printed and our print function never got executed. Now let's try to assign a value to it. As we can observe, the more text string is now printed in our console. The second safe method is also using if statement. However, in addition to checking if the value exists, we are assigning that value to a temporary variable. What happened here is we declared a new variable TMP string, assigned whatever value it is in our optional string. By placing this declaration within the if statement condition, we also verified that our value is not nil. And if the condition is true, we can safely use our new variable. As you notice, we are not using the exclamation mark after our new variable because our new variable is not optional. As you can see, I'm using let, a constant, instead of variable for our temporary variable. We could also use var instead, however, it's less common as typically within those statements we are not changing our values, we're just utilizing them. So similarly to our previous example, if we are removing a value from our original string, by assigning nil to it, for example, our print function will not be executed. And if we want to assign different text to it, we can observe in console that both times our print functions were executed, and we got different strings printed. You may be wondering, why do we use safe unwrapping methods when we are assigning a value to our optional variables right there? Well, we need to remember these are just examples to demonstrate the principles. In real-life situation, you will have more sophisticated code than this, and you will be assigning values to your variables in different parts of the code, or maybe different files, or at times you will rely on users to provide values to it, which they may or may not provide. Now that we understand how to work with optionals, it's time to go back to our SmartBean project. Let's remove all our experimental code and remind ourselves of our profits dictionary. The new and important piece of information is that the dictionary elements are optionals, not a guaranteed value. And that's a missing component that prevented us previously from improving the rest of our code. Let's do it now. Pause this video for some time and try to make all the adjustments on your own. Well done! Here are my results. As you can see, we no longer need to remember the index of each category we're using. We simply use a key of our new dictionary. That applies all the way through our code. To browse a dictionary, we also use for-in loop, except each element is presented not by one, but by two variables that refers to its key and its value. In our example, we are not using keys of our elements, the category, so we can improve our code a little further and ignore this variable by replacing it with underscore. Great progress, I must say. Congratulations on your work!